Hello and a very good morning. It's just past 8 this Wednesday morning and we're back again with all the news and breakfast news. And over the course of the next 1 hour, we'll get you news from across the nation, international, sports and business updates. And our focus is going to be on the fresh guidelines that have been issued by the Home Affairs Ministry to tackle the surging COVID-19 cases. The states have been advised to follow all the utmost precautions and also to follow the test, track and treat protocol. Now, these guidelines will come into force from the 1st of April and will remain in force till the 30th of April. We'll also be discussing these guidelines with our guests here on the show. We'll get you much more. I am Nancy Kohli and with me is Preeti.
Yes, thank you, Nancy. And when we talk of the show ahead, it's a packed 1 hour added to the MHA guidelines. We'll also be focusing on the election updates, how political temperatures are soaring in the poll-bound states. Added to that, we'll also get you the action which is expected today in both the houses of parliament. Apart from that, we'll also get you international updates and sports updates, enough to keep you engaged for the next 1 hour. First, we get to the headlines.
US President Joe Biden extends the Obamacare on the 11th anniversary to provide benefits to millions through COVID relief laws, distributes 100 million COVID relief checks.
London to Cardiff, people pay their respects on anniversary of COVID-19 lockdown. Close to 28 million people receive at least one dose of COVID-19 vaccine in the United Kingdom so far.
Israel holds fourth election in 2 years. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims huge win in the country's elections.
Assembly elections gain momentum. Prime Minister Modi campaigns for BJP in West Bengal and Assam. Home Minister Amit Shah to hold roadshows and public meetings at Kollam, Kottayam and Palakkad in Kerala. Union Minister for Information and Broadcasting Prakash Javadekar to release BJP election manifesto for Kerala.
The Home Affairs Ministry issues guidelines for effective control of COVID-19 to be effective from the 1st of April and remain in force up to the 30th of April. Mandate the states and the union territories to strictly enforce this test, track, treat protocol, ensure observance of COVID-appropriate behavior by everyone, and to also scale up the vaccination drive.
India crosses a landmark milestone in COVID-19 vaccination. More than 5 crore COVID-19 vaccine doses administered, 15.8 lakh vaccine doses given in the last 24 hours. Government assures no shortage of vaccines. Delhi, Mumbai ban Holi celebrations in public.
World Tuberculosis Day is being observed to raise public awareness about the disease. The theme of the World Tuberculosis Day 2021 is "The Clock is Ticking," conveys the message to eliminate TB within the time frame. President Ramnath Kovind hails the achievement of the National TB Elimination Program. Well, those were the headlines. Let's now begin with the news in detail. Our top story being from the poll-bound states there.
Let's get started with the stage all set for high-octane assembly polls. West Bengal is set to vote in the first phase, scheduled to be held on March 27th. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will campaign for BJP in West Bengal's Kanti, Lakhimpur and Sipajhar. In Kerala, Home Minister Amit Shah will hold roadshows in Kollam, Kottayam and Palakkad. Union Minister for Information and Broadcasting Prakash Javadekar will release BJP election manifesto for Kerala. And to get us more on that, our correspondent Rajiv Bhattacharya is joining us from West Bengal. Rajiv, very quickly, even as the days near the poll contest, the election battle is getting more interesting. Let us know more about how our political temperature is soaring in the state.
Preeti, as you know, elections in West Bengal are being held across, held in 8 phases, and the first phase is on the 27th of March. Now, on the 27th of March, 5 districts are going to the polls, and 30 seats spread across 5 districts are going to the polls, and these districts are mainly in the western part of the state, like East Medinipur, West Medinipur, Purulia, Bankura, and Jhargram. Parts of East and West Medinipur and Bankura actually. Now, therefore, all the energies of political leaders are being concentrated on these 5 districts, and as you know, the Prime Minister is supposed to address a rally today. Yesterday, we have the Union Home Minister and the BJP President JP Nadda. And apart from these, this is as far as the BJP is concerned. And then you have the West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, who's crisscrossing these 5 districts. And then you have the left and the Congress leadership who are also traveling to the remotest corners of these districts to appeal to the voters, and the turnout of the crowds at the meetings and the road shows and the street corner meetings that are being held, and that's what we have been able to see, has been quite impressive. Pretty.
Right. Also, Rajiv, West Bengal is known to be having a high voter turnout in the assembly elections, so that may not be the challenge this time around as well. What different are you feeling among the electorate? It's really a bitterly contested election this time around as well, and many, star campaigners are reaching the state to woo the voters. How are electorate, taking the message they're being given by various political parties?
Right, of course, as you rightly pointed out, that the voter turnout in West Bengal has always been quite high. And this time also it's not going to be different. But amidst all this, there are fears of the rising. See, we're talking about start campaigners. From tomorrow onwards, you'll have the former Bollywood superstar Mithun Chakravarti starting his campaign from tomorrow. And therefore all these things will draw in more crowds, and that probably will have a reflection in the EVMs. But at the same time, the fears of COVID are keeping the government and the administration on tenterhooks. But also precautions are being taken, and you must remember that more booths have been put up this year so that people can vote in a relatively safe manner. And therefore, we will just have to wait and see how it really pans out, Preeti.
All right, we'll have to see how it pans out, Rajiv. Very quickly, also let us know, generally, when we talk of elections, then it is infrastructure, it is basic amenities, which is always the center point of, any election in any state. I would want you to specify for us any specific interesting points which we look forward to the election battle in the state this time around.
Right. As you know, the Election Commission has already made special arrangements for physically challenged people. This time around, a special arrangement has been made for the senior voters, senior citizens in the age bracket of 80 plus and all that, who may not have to go to the booth, who feel they do not desire to go to the booth. The Commission will make special arrangements for them. Have made special arrangements for them. That is an interesting feature, I think, and COVID or no COVID, this is one feature which can be carried on in the future to avoid inconvenience to senior elderly citizens who are still concerned about the way the country is being run and so on.
Okay, sure. All right, Rajiv Bhattacharya, thanks very much for joining us for the moment and bringing to us all the updates there from on the ground in West Bengal as far as the assembly elections there are concerned. Let's now move on, get you more updates now from Parliament. While the Finance Bill 2021 was passed by the Lok Sabha on Tuesday, the Finance Minister said that she's ready to discuss bringing petrol and diesel under the GST in the next council meeting. The opposition MPs created ruckus at the time of the introduction of the bill related to the wide-ranging powers of the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. Now today in the Rajya Sabha, the Government of the National Capital Territory of Delhi Amendment Bill 2021 will be moved for consideration and passage to amend the Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Act 1991. And in the Lok Sabha, the Airports Economic Regulatory Authority of India Amendment Bill 2021 will be introduced today. Also, the National Commission for Allied and the Healthcare Professions Bill 2021 and the Juvenile Justice, Care and Protection of Children Amendment Bill 2021 will be moved for consideration and passage. And let's now go across to our correspondent Vikas Sarthi, who's joining us with more updates as far as the Parliament proceedings for today are concerned. Vikas, good morning. Once again, important day there in both the houses of Parliament with the critical legislations there scheduled for both the houses. One would only hope that there's no ruckus that prevails, and these bills are really taken up for the interest of the country.
Good morning, Nancy. Right, there is very important legislation in Rajya Sabha. That bill was expected to be discussed yesterday itself, but we saw frequent disruption by the opposition leaders. In fact, the whole opposition was against this kind of proposal, and the offensive led by leader of opposition Mallikarjun Kharge. Later, outside the house, he said that again they will try today that this bill must not be passed by the Rajya Sabha. So he said that all opposition parties will will sit together and will make strategy for today. As you have already mentioned, that three important bills will also be tabled in the Lok Sabha, and ministers will try to get them passed today itself. But all eyes will be on Rajya Sabha. Today Rajya Sabha will start proceeding 1 hour ahead because of the disruption of yesterday. So Rajya Sabha will start functioning from 10 a.m. today itself, and then House will discuss this Government of NCT Amendment Bill 2021.
Sure.
All right, Vikas, very quickly also, get us the main points of the amendment bill, which is to be taken up in Rajya Sabha. You tell us it is a very important legislation, the Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Amendment Bill 2021. Acquaint our viewers with the main highlights, the main points of the bill.
Right, Preeti, if you recall that apart from three major issues like land, home department, and finance, and some other issues as well, those powers were earlier with the LG, and other issues were in the domain of the Legislative Assembly of Delhi. So after this amendment, whatever decision Delhi government takes will have to be ratified by the Lieutenant Governor, and because of that, opposition is saying that indirectly Delhi will become a state ruled by the Lieutenant Governor and not by the elected representative or the Chief Minister. So they are also mentioning about a recent Supreme Court judgment where Supreme Court has mentioned clearly that what should be the role of Lieutenant Governor and what should be the role of Chief Minister. Though the center says that there was some discrepancies exist, and the Supreme Court judgment was not very clear on certain aspects, and because of that this bill has been introduced and has been passed by the Lok Sabha. But opposition is saying that indirectly all the powers earlier, apart from three major issues, all subjects were under the government of Delhi and Chief Minister. But now after this amendment, whatever legislation or whatever decision Delhi government takes, that will have to be ratified by the Lieutenant Governor.
All right, Vikas, thank you so much for joining us with those inputs. That was our correspondent Vikas Sarthi explaining the important legislation which is to be taken up in Rajya Sabha today, the Government of National Capital Territory of Delhi Amendment Bill 2021. He also tells us that Rajya Sabha will start functioning an hour ahead of the scheduled time. That is, the House will assemble at 10 a.m. We'll keep you updated. Let's turn focus on to the COVID updates now. The Cabinet has decided to open the COVID vaccination drive for everyone above the age of 45 years starting from 1st of April. Union Minister Prakash Javadekar announced that there will be no need for medical certificates supporting comorbidity conditions. As a fresh spike is being reported in some states, particularly Maharashtra, expanding the coverage and enhancing the speed of vaccination is seen as a strategy to tackle the situation. Ahead of holy festivities, government has stressed upon importance of continuing COVID-appropriate behavior.
And India has crossed a significant milestone in the fight against the global pandemic, COVID-19. The cumulative number of COVID-19 vaccine doses administered in the country has crossed 5 crore. A total of 15,80,000 vaccine doses were given yesterday, the 67th day of the nationwide COVID-19 vaccination.
The Union Home Ministry has issued guidelines for effective control of the COVID-19 pandemic. They will remain in force from 1st of April till 30th of April. In view of the increase in the number of COVID patients in some parts of the country, the state and union territories have been ordered to strictly implement the process of screening, monitoring and treatment. In states where the ratio of RT-PCR tests is low, they have been asked to expedite it. The guidelines emphasize that the newly found positive patients must be isolated or quarantined and be provided timely treatment. Directions have been issued to find out about the contacts of the new cases as soon as possible and similarly isolate and quarantine them as well. The district administration has been instructed to demarcate the containment areas cautiously at micro level and notify it on the website. All eligible people have also been asked to speed up the process of vaccination. To talk more about it, we're joined in by a guest in the show. We're joined in by Dr. Rajendra Kumar Dhamija. He's expert of public health and HOD neurology, Lady Hardinge Medical College. Welcome. We welcome you, sir, on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Dhamija, first of all, I would want you to, let us acquaint us with what stage are we in the fight against COVID-19. 5 crore vaccinations have already been given. At the same time, while the world is bracing the third wave of the virus, where is our fight at present?
Thank you for having me on the show. We are continuing our fight against the COVID pandemic. In fact, we had successfully almost mitigated till December and then the numbers started increasing. We need to consolidate those gains made in the last 6 months. And now at presently we are witnessing a surge in cases in certain parts of the country, particularly Maharashtra, Kerala, Punjab, Delhi, and so on. So obviously the COVID appropriate behavior is must now for the government to enforce this, and the government has issued guidelines last night extending these restrictions till the end of the April, and these emphasize on restricting the movements, testing, tracking and treatment guidelines as maximally possible at a micro level. And these guidelines focus on 3 things basically. One is the testing, as you mentioned, that 70% of the testing should be RT-PCR, and we need to increase more testing that's required. On top of that, we also need to increase genomic sequencing to identify the mutant strains coming from abroad with the international travel opening up. And secondly is, of course, the tracking the maximum people of the contacts. At least 70 to 80% of the contacts of the exposed person should be traced within 48 hours and quarantined or isolated as the case may be. And third is, of course, the treatment part. The guidelines have already been issued, and they include the testing, the isolation or quarantine, and the treatment at home or the dedicated COVID hospitals. So these are very important, and I think what we are today is a matter of concern. People had this vaccine euphoria. With the arrival of vaccine, people thought the COVID-19 has gone, the pandemic has ended, and on the declining number late last year, till December, people thought that they are out of the pandemic and they were complacent. The third thing, of course, coming up, the festivals and gatherings and religious gatherings. I think the time has come now. We should the focus on science, and science should prevail over the religion, faith, and other things to break the chain. So obviously, these 3 factors, I think, led to the surge of cases, whether you call it second wave or third wave, depending upon the cities.
Right. Dr. Dhamija, of course, like you're also mentioning, we saw substantial gains being made in a fight against the global pandemic. And you also spoke about the COVID appropriate behavior. Would you say that there's laxity on the part of the people, that we are failing the nation and the government's efforts? Because, we are not really adhering to the protocol of wearing our masks, maintaining proper hand hygiene, proper social distancing. So that really needs to be reinforced. How important are these guidelines, in really consolidating the gains that were made earlier?
Absolutely, you are dot on the point that we need to enforce again and more than ever to these COVID appropriate behaviors and the government guidelines regarding social distancing of 2 gaj ki duri, the masking, always wear a mask when you go outside, and of course sanitizing your face and hand. So these three basic precautions should be now continued more than ever, more forcefully, and the government has now taking action against people who are not wearing masks. And I think that is the only way to mitigate the pandemic in addition to the vaccine. So both the things, the vaccination for all, more number of vaccines, including Sputnik or the Novavax, more availability to the people at large, free for, the vaccines for all, whether at the moment we are focusing on people more than 45 years, but I'm sure that these guidelines will also come up that the vaccine will be available on demand. And thirdly, of course, the appropriate behavior in addition to vaccine. Both these things are important to mitigate the pandemic. Unless we encourage people to participate in this Jan Andolan, the responsibility of the citizens. You see, the government has been doing its own job. Researchers have been doing their own jobs. We are having the vaccine in the shortest possible time.
Right.
It is the duty of the public, of the citizens, to follow these guidelines and to help the government to safeguard their own lives and the lives of their loved ones and society at large.
Right. So the MHA guidelines also talk of, test, track, trace and test. That has to be further enhanced. Added to that, also the newly found positive cases have to be isolated and quarantined.
Yes.
Sir, we are talking of, the time when the pandemic struck the country. In the beginning, there was a lot of skepticism. There was a lot of fear among the people, maybe call it lack of awareness. Are we at a better position at this point in time? Are people more aware of what is to be done? Because on one hand, the government is up, it's a Herculean task up the sleeves of the government of keeping the pandemic at bay, at the same time ensuring that people come out themselves and practice, because or the guidelines, or for that matter the precautions which have to be taken against the pandemic are individually that have to be taken care by the individuals themselves. So being in the medical profession, do you see that there is still lack of awareness, or the government, or for that matter the authorities, have to work more on the awareness aspect related to the pandemic?
I think people are aware. What we need to is to change their behavior. And to change the behavior is the most difficult task in human psychology. We tend to resist the change, whatever change you try to bring in your life. So that's difficult, and the change in behavior is the fourth aspect of public health measures. So we need to, everybody knows that they need to wear masks and they need to sanitize their hands and they need to keep distancing, but then they don't follow it. Maybe more than 1 year has gone by in the pandemic and people are a little bit fatigued also, and they want to come out. That is understandable. But the number of cases going up with the new strains coming up in the arrival of the vaccine, we need to be little more aggressive now in enforcing these public health guidelines. And it is the duty of the citizens at micro level, at individual level, to participate in this movement against the pandemic. Unless we all participate, unless we all contribute our own duty and our own responsibility, it is very difficult for the government to act alone without the cooperation of the people.
Absolutely. You made a very important point there, Dr. Dhamija, that it's most difficult perhaps to change anyone's behavior. And that is what is most struggling, struggling aspect of fighting this global pandemic right now. Even as the vaccination coverage is widening across the country, we're also in fact battling new mutations and new strains of the virus. And that was, perhaps had to happen. The scientists had in fact been predicting that. So how important are you seeing now the powers being given to states and union territories imposing local curbs to control the rising COVID-19 cases?
I think these are very important, and the autonomy to the state to make containment zones and individually manage those containment zones at the level of district magistrates and the local authorities is very, very crucial, because they are at the grassroots level and they can enforce these guidelines. Guidelines are issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India, but they have to be implemented at the grassroots level.
Right.
And that's our responsibility with the administration to implement in letter and spirit, so that we can fight the pandemic and we can break the chain. Unless we break this chain of virus transmission, and the virus tries to survive in this challenging environment, because we are trying to fight the virus, we are trying to chase the virus, and virus is trying to survive by making mutations or by trying to infect more and more susceptible individuals. So I think people thought that more than 50% people have infected and we are going towards herd immunity. So, and that actually led to decline in numbers also, because the seroprevalence was reported to be more than 50% in certain parts of the country. And that led to decline. But that is a short-lived. Obviously, the immunity cannot be long-lived for more than 6 months or 9 months after the actual infection. So what we need is actually to go for vaccination, even for those people who were seropositive or who had mild asymptomatic or COVID infection, because for them also it is very important. If they had the infection and a little bit of immunity, if you give them the vaccination, their immunity will be very, very robust. So obviously, they are at the advantage position to get the robust immunity. So obviously, all these people, even those who had COVID infection, should come forward, particularly now for people more than 45 years of age. And this is an opportunity for all of us to fight this pandemic and do our own duty and responsibility to end this COVID-19 pandemic. It has been going on for more than 1 year. We can understand it has slowed down the economy and it has affected the society at large. But then we have to come out of this, and the only way to come out of this pandemic is by two things only. One is the vaccination. We are lucky that we have the vaccine now. And second is the public health measures of sanitizing, face masking, and social distancing.
Yes, yes, behavioral changes would be.
And of course, one fourth thing is, of course, avoiding the crowds and not going to the crowded places, whether they are the gatherings or festivals or weddings or things like that.
Absolutely.
All right, I would also want a word from you on the vaccination drive. More than 5 crore people have already been vaccinated. And we started this fight against the pandemic, at a point wherein we did not have PPE kits. To this point wherein we are having vaccine Maitri, at the same time we are inoculating, the countrymen also on a very war footing, if I may say. So what is your take on the vaccination drive? And also the government will be allowing vaccinations for people above the age of 45 years without the certification of a comorbidity from 1st of April.
I think this is a welcome step and much needed step. We needed it actually. And we have been advocating that the vaccine should be available to most of the peoples, and particularly in those areas where there's a large surge of virus. So where the fire is already there, we need to extinguish that fire. So obviously, we need more people to come forward for vaccination. This is a very success story that we have inoculated more than 5 crore people in a short span of 67 days. But we need to vaccinate more and more. The target is 30 crores by the end of July. So I think that is a realistic target now, with the people of 45 years and above being eligible to come for the vaccination. So the government has done very wonderfully in last 12 months, rightly from the establishment of more than 2,000 labs capable of doing PCR testing, or it is the PPE kits or the vaccination manufacturing and deployment in different parts of the country. I think we need to now come forward and consolidate these gains by getting ourselves vaccinated and appropriate behavior implementation amongst the masses.
Right. Also, Dr. Dhamija, in the fresh guidelines, the center has also observed that there is the pace of vaccination in some states and union territories is uneven. It's slow. It's also coming to the fore that people have certain inhibitions about getting vaccinated, about the certain side effects that they may have. But it's very important to break the chain of transmission. So what's your message, doctor, here to the viewers at large this morning? How important this is really for them to go out and get vaccinated, and also in fact maintaining adhering to a very appropriate COVID behavior.
So there are two things. One, you said about the vaccine hesitancy, and second is the availability of the vaccine or uneven distribution of the vaccine. The vaccine hesitancy, as defined by WHO, is when the vaccine is available freely and at an affordable price. Even then, if the people are not coming forward to get the vaccination, that is called vaccine hesitancy. And it has been seen all over the world. In fact, WHO said it is one of the 10 most important public health problems across the globe. So it's not only for the vaccine hesitancy for the COVID-19. The vaccine hesitancy has always been there, whether it is polio or other vaccination drives in children. So that the issue of COVID-19 vaccination is primarily because of the safety concerns initially. But I can assure you through you and through your viewers that I'm on the member of the adverse event following immunization for COVID-19 committee, and we are looking
Okay.
at the people who come forward for minor side effects. And I have not seen anyone having a major problem. So I can assure that both the vaccines which are available today are safe and effective, and whatever vaccine you get is equally effective. So I would appeal that please take your vaccine, whatever vaccine is available, and whatever time you get your turn to come and get inoculation. So there is no concern about the safety, and of course the hesitancy in certain parts of the country needs to be handled and tackled in a better communication way.
Right.
And that is one of the way we are talking today about the vaccine inoculation drive, which is one of the largest drive of the country, and I think that these communication strategies should make a difference.
All right, important message coming in from Dr. R.K. Dhameja this morning. Thank you so much, sir, for joining in and sharing your insights. That was our guest in the show today, Dr. R.K. Dhameja, telling us and inspiring people to step out and get themselves inoculated. Remember, it's a very decisive stage wherein we are when we talk of the fight against the pandemic. Behavioral changes are the most important at present. Remember, wearing a mask and wearing it correctly and properly. This is the crux. Precaution is always better than cure.
Absolutely. There's no other way than just exercising utmost caution and precaution. In fact, we'll also talk about more about that on our show. And in fact, public celebrations and the gatherings now for the upcoming festivals, including Holi, have been prohibited in the national capital, Delhi and Mumbai, amid a renewed surge in the COVID-19 cases across the country. The Uttar Pradesh government, on the other hand, has issued a set of guidelines asking senior citizens and vulnerable groups to stay away from the celebrations, and said no processions or gatherings will be allowed without prior administrative permission. Now, the Delhi Disaster Management Authority has stated that amid the rising COVID-19 cases in Delhi, the public celebrations for upcoming festivals such as Holi, Navratri and the gatherings in general will not be allowed. The Mumbai civic body also prohibited all the private or public celebration of Holika Dahan and the Rang Panchami in the public places, hotels and resorts. In a tweet, the BMC said, I quote, "Let's celebrate after the virus has been chased." It added that strict action will be taken against the offenders.
Today is World Tuberculosis Day. How to prevent the spread of TB infection? We get you more in this report. Take a look.
World Tuberculosis Day is observed on 24th March every year to raise public awareness about the devastating health, social and economic consequences of TB and to step up efforts to end the global TB epidemic. Tuberculosis is a potentially serious infectious disease that mainly affects lungs. The bacteria that causes tuberculosis are spread from one person to another through tiny droplets released into the air when the infected person coughs or sneezes.
24th March is remembered as a World TB Day, as 1/3 of the world population is infected with tuberculosis, and India has 26 lakh cases of tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is a treatable disease. It presents as cough, fever, weight loss, blood coming from in the cough, and loss of appetite.
TB remains one of the world's deadliest infectious killers. Each day, nearly 4,000 people lose their lives to TB and close to 28,000 people fall ill with this curable disease. If not treated in time, a person with active TB can infect 10 to 15 other people through close contact over the course of an year.
It is very easy to diagnose and treat tuberculosis. It spreads by droplet infection. If we are able to treat all the cases with TB, we can eradicate tuberculosis.
Proper treatment and following precautions is must for a TB patient. Spread of tuberculosis infection can be prevented by maintaining good hygiene, following cough etiquettes and strengthening the immune system. Kiran Bhardwaj, DD News.
And on the eve of the World Tuberculosis Day, President Ramnath Kovind has said, I quote, "The year 2020 was a watershed moment for healthcare in India as well as around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic underlined the importance of a quality healthcare system accessible to every individual. The entire national TB elimination program was at the forefront in the fight against COVID-19. Their commitment towards tackling the COVID-19 pandemic while continuing with the TB elimination efforts is commendable. The Government of India is committed to achieving the goal of universal health coverage as per the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Now, this is being implemented under the aegis of Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, which is the largest national insurance scheme in the world. I would like to compliment the National TB Elimination Program on their commendable achievements despite the difficult circumstances. On this occasion, we should reinvigorate our efforts to achieve health for all and create a brighter and a healthier future for the generations to come." Unquote.
India on Tuesday abstained from voting in the United Nations Human Rights Council on a resolution against Sri Lanka for crimes committed against Tamils during the country's civil war, which ended in 2009. The resolution on deterioration of Sri Lanka's human rights situation was adopted after 22 members out of 47 voted in favor. A total of 11 countries, including China, Russia and Pakistan, voted against the resolution in support of the Sri Lankan government. 14 countries, including India, abstained from voting. Before the voting, India expressed support for Sri Lankan Tamils for equality, but also stressed on unity and territorial integrity of the country. India urged Sri Lanka to carry forward the process of reconciliation and to address the aspirations of the Tamil community and ensure that fundamental freedom and human rights of all its citizens are fully protected.
India believes in the primary responsibility of the states for the promotion and protection of human rights and constructive international dialogue and cooperation guided by the principles and purposes of the UN Charter in support of such efforts. Madam President, India's approach to the question of human rights in Sri Lanka is guided by two fundamental considerations. One is a support of the Tamils of Sri Lanka for equality, justice, dignity and peace. The other is in ensuring the unity, stability and territorial integrity of Sri Lanka, that the government of Sri Lanka carries forward the process of reconciliation, address the aspirations of Tamil community and continues to engage constructively with the international community to ensure that the fundamental freedoms and human rights of all its citizens are fully protected.
And with that, let's now move on and get you news from around the world in a segment across the globe. And beginning first with Israel, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in the run for yet another term as votes are being counted in the fourth election. Now, fresh elections were announced after neither Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu nor his opponents could forge a durable majority. However, Netanyahu's Likud party leads in the opinion polls and is expected to emerge with the biggest number of votes. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu claimed victory in the elections despite the exit polls projecting a result being too close to call. The last election was held in March 2020 when only 8 people in Israel were infected with COVID-19. However, a year later, 6,000 have now died of the virus-related complications.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with his 29 fellow NATO counterparts in Brussels on Tuesday. NATO's 30 foreign ministers later released a statement reaffirming the enduring transatlantic bond between Europe and North America. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State said that the alliance was at a pivotal moment but could emerge stronger after internal disputes over Turkey and Russian gas. Also, the visit was amongst the first top U.S. official to visit NATO since President Joe Biden took office in January.
In more news now, North Korea fired 2 short-range missiles at the weekend, US and South Korean officials have said. However, Washington also played down the first such test under President Joe Biden and said it was still open to dialogue with Pyongyang. The North Korean activity involved weapon systems at the low end of the spectrum that were not covered by the UNSC testing bans. While the launch marks North Korea's first publicly known weapons test since President Biden took office in January this year. Biden has downplayed the latest activity, saying nothing much has changed.
We have learned that there's nothing much has changed.
In Australia, authorities have issued fresh flood evacuation orders for parts of the east coast and warned that water levels would keep rising in some areas despite relief in weather conditions. New South Wales remains the worst affected as dams continue to overflow and rivers bulge. More than 6,000 people were evacuated in the last 24 hours and were moved to safer zones. Meanwhile, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said that heavy load helicopters would be prepared to transport food to supermarkets where supplies were running short. Several hundred Australian Defence Force personnel will be sent to flood-affected areas in the country's east over the next few days to help in the recovery.
Now in the Congo Republic, the president there has been re-elected with more than 88% of the votes. His closest rival, Guy Brice Parfait Colaçars, received less than 8%. Meanwhile, the main opposition party boycotted the vote and two of his other main rivals were convicted of crimes after the last election in 2016. Now, Sassou is a former paratrooper who took power in 1979. He lost Congo's first multi-party elections in 1992 but returned to office in 1997 after a civil war. Congo's economy has been in crisis since 2014 when the oil prices collapsed, which has caused the country's external debt, much of it owed to private oil traders like Glencore.
And up next, we take a quick look at the update on the COVID-19 front from across the world. When we talk of the figures, the global case tally for COVID-19 has crossed 12 crore 27 lakh, while there has been over 27 lakh 45,000 deaths due to the virus. United States continues to remain the worst affected nation from COVID-19. The country has reported over 3 crore 6 lakh cases of COVID-19. The deadly virus has claimed 5 lakh 56,000 lives in the US.
Now, the Biden administration on Tuesday announced expanding the special pandemic enrollment period of Obamacare special plans until 15th of August from the previous deadline of 15th May. The change will provide Americans more time to take advantage of benefits granted through the COVID relief law. On Tuesday, the US President traveled to Ohio to mark the 11th anniversary of the signing of the Affordable Care Act and tout his moves to reverse many Trump-era measures aimed at weakening the landmark health reform law. While the visit comes as Biden and other top White House officials are hitting the road on the Help is Here tour to promote the $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill. That's Biden's first major legislation. Biden said his administration will have distributed 100 million relief checks by today as part of the stimulus package.
In the United Kingdom, landmarks were illuminated in yellow on Tuesday evening as a beacon of hope, marking 1-year anniversary of the first lockdown. Prime Minister Boris Johnson ordered the first stay at home on March 23rd. Prime Minister Boris Johnson warned people to take guard against the third wave of the COVID pandemic. In London, residents in South London stood outside their houses with burning candles to commemorate those they had lost. The number of people known to have died in the United Kingdom within 28 days of testing positive for COVID-19 now stands at 1,26,172. Meanwhile, over 28 million people have received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine in the nation.
The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Tuesday said that Britain would not dream of imposing any blockades on the COVID-19 vaccines. He added that there were encouraging signs that the European Union shared the sentiment. European Union officials said that the European Commission will extend powers to European Union to potentially block the COVID-19 vaccine exports to Britain and other areas with much higher vaccination rates. Well, Tuesday marked a year to the day since Britons were first ordered to stay at home to contain the spread of COVID-19.
In this country, don't believe in blockades. of any kind of vaccines or vaccine material. Not something that this country would dream of engaging in, and I'm encouraged by some of the things I've heard from the continent in the same sense. And there's no point in one country being immunised on its own. We need the whole planet to be inoculated.
The Director General of the World Trade Organization on Tuesday said that she was disappointed in the European Union's export authorization scheme for COVID-19 vaccines and said that she was talking to the bloc about this measure. The European Commission on March 11 said that it had extended the mechanism set up at the end of January as a reaction to vaccine makers' announcements of delays in deliveries to the European Union to the end of June. Under the scheme, companies must get an authorization before exporting COVID-19 shots and may have export requests denied if they do not respect their supply commitments with the European Union. And up next, we get to how the historic Dandi March has had an underlying significance in India's freedom struggle.
And well, an interesting anecdote from the Dandi Yatra will look back in the year 1930 on 23rd March. Mahatma Gandhi had spent the night in Amod and embarked by foot to Samni. In the evening, Bapu had reached Samni, where he stayed till the 24th, and on the 24th of March, Bapu spent the entire day in silence. And retracing those steps taken by the Mahatma, the present-day foot soldiers have reached Samni, that's a small hamlet in rural Gujarat, on their way to Dandi. Well, they're all enthused to take part in an event in the run-up to 75 years of India's independence.
गांधी जी को तो हमने नहीं देखा है, लेकिन हमारे जो दादाजी थे वो बोलते थे कि गांधी जी हमारे घर पे आए थे। जब दांडी यात्रा का जो आयोजन करना था, दांडी यात्रा निकालने से पहले, तो गांधी जी, कस्तूरबा और सरदार पटेल तीन हमारे घर पे रुके थे। कस्तूरबा ने हमारे घर पे ही खाना बनाया था बापू जी के लिए।
गांव वालों ने बताया था कि हम सब नाइट को फानस लेके, लालटेन लेके लेने गए थे उसको, गांधी जी को। और हमारे वडील थे हमारे मोहल्ले के, वो टिबोन नाथाभाई पटेल, उसने पहला राजीनामा पुलिस पटेल का गांधी जी के हाथ में दिया था।
बहुत खुश है कि फिर एक बार उनके साक्षी बनने का हमें मौका मिला है। ये बहुत ही बड़ा कार्य है जो देश को एकता और अखंडता से जुड़े रखेगा।
And up next, we get to a web review wherein a correspondent joins us every day to get us what all has been put forth in the various social media platforms.
And we have our colleague Arun joining us this morning. Good morning, Arun. Just take us through what all news items and developments that you've picked up from the World Wide Web this morning for our viewers.
Good morning, Preeti and Nancy. Good morning to all our viewers. Let's begin the web review with some important business points. Now, first of all, the Deccan Herald has published this news article. Now, this news article is trending on almost all the newspaper websites and Twitter as well. Now, this is about the finance minister while replying to a debate on finance bill in the parliament yesterday. She said that she's ready to discuss for bringing petrol, diesel under the ambit of GST in the next council meet. Now, while she was addressing, replying to a debate in the parliament yesterday, she clearly mentioned this point that that she might consider, if in case in the next GST council meeting, if the states and centre, they both are ready to bring this to on the agenda of GST council to bring petrol and diesel under the ambit of GST. So she'll be glad primarily to bring the petrol to discuss primarily about the petrol diesel being brought to under the ambit of GST. Earlier also we have seen how various stakeholders have raised their voices that primarily ATF or primarily natural gas should be brought under the ambit of GST. So this is primarily a good news as far as oil and gas sector is concerned, as the finance minister has shown her willingness that if in case this is brought on the table for consideration, this will be discussed prominently. This is trending on all the newspaper websites. Second big article is about from the aviation sector. Now, we know this fact that center has come out with the guidelines as far as COVID protocols are concerned. So in that context, only DGCA, the aviation regulator, has extended the international flight ban till April end. But interestingly, the air bubble mechanism with various countries, that will continue. Second, the Vande Bharat mission, that will also continue during even this ban of the flights. And last but not the least, the cargo flights primarily, which are bringing all the materials and freight point, that will also be continuing under this ban as well. That means all the flight operations that are being permitted by the DGCA, that will continue, but all the scheduled commercial international flights, that shall be banned till the end of the April. Third big news article is from the DNA. Now it says that good news, Yogi government to hold 822 job fairs for youth on Wednesday. That means today is a significant day for people of Uttar Pradesh, because in all the 822 blocks in Uttar Pradesh, job fairs will be organized. Now what the government of Uttar Pradesh is targeting, that in each block, wherever the job fair is organized, 100 people will be given employment opportunity. That means the state government is targeting to provide 82,000 jobs in a single day. So this could also be a record that in one state, a record number of 82,000 of jobs will be provided to the youngsters, the migrant laborers, the locals of Uttar Pradesh. They all will be given opportunities as far as this job fair is concerned. This is an important and interesting article as far as Uttar Pradesh job fair is concerned. Last but not the least, it is about the stock markets. We have seen the bull run, as a dream bull run primarily after the budget presentation as well. And now we have witnessed that kind of volatility in the stock markets. So if you look at the last entire week, we saw, the bears primarily taking grip on the markets, and we saw a lot of consolidation in the stock markets. But yes, yesterday, the stock markets bounced back and Sensex was up by 280 points. And Nifty also managed to close above the level of 14,800 levels. So it's an interesting point. The stock market news was also trending because all the banking financial stocks that were trending and that managed primarily to take the stock markets higher. And that's what we saw, ahead of the expiry session, we saw, a kind of run up coming into the stock markets. So these are some of the news articles that were trending on the websites and, the newspaper websites and Twitter, primarily in the social media as well. But for the news, back to you, Preeti and Nancy.
All right. Thank you so much, Arun, for joining in with that web review. So that was our correspondent, Arun, letting us know what all has been put forth in the various social media platforms. Time now to get to all the sports updates in our segment, Sports Track. Debutants Krunal Pandya and Prasidh Krishna made the big stage their own to give an all-round India a convincing 66-run victory over world champions England in the first ODI of the three-match series in Pune yesterday. After under-fire opener Shikhar Dhawan delivered with a solid 98, Krunal remained not out at 58 off 31 to fire India to 317 for 5, following England's decision to field. Krunal's half-century was the fastest 50 by a debutant. At 135 for no loss in the 15th over, with Jason Roy and Johnny Bairstow going strong, England seemed to be running away with the chase before Krishna and Shardul Thakur shared 7 wickets between them to script a winning comeback. The 25-year-old Krishna's figures were the best by an Indian debutant as England's innings ended at 251 in 42.1 overs. Meanwhile, Shikhar Dhawan was declared man of the match.
Now, world number 1 T20 batswoman Shefali Verma blasted 60 runs of 30 balls after left-arm spinner Rajeshwari Gaikwad's fine bowling display to power India to a consolidation 9-wicket win over South Africa in the third and final match in Lucknow on Tuesday. Now, Gaikwad picked up 3 wickets for just 9 runs to help India restrict South Africa women to 112 for 7. And then Verma and captain Smriti Mandhana, who remained not out at 48 of 28 balls, shared 96 runs for the opening wicket to canter to an easy win with 9 overs to spare. Shefali hit 7 fours and 5 sixes during his blistering knock, while Mandhana had 9 boundaries in his unbeaten innings. While the South African women, however, have clinched the 3-match T20 series to 1, having won the first 2 matches.
All right, up next we get to the events which made this day special in history.
On this day in 1855, the first telegraph line between Calcutta and Agra was opened, which was introduced by Lord Dalhousie. On the same day, in 1882, Robert Koch discovered the tuberculosis, which was a major event in the history of medicine and turning point in an understanding and conquest of the deadly disease, which had plagued mankind for millennia. Robert Koch was also conferred Nobel Prize for the same. On this day, in 1977, Morarji Desai sworn in as the 4th Prime Minister of India at Rashtrapati Bhavan. He was elected leader of Janata Party. This was the first non-Congress government in India. In his first public pronouncement after being sworn in as Prime Minister, Morarji Desai aimed to end poverty. On the same day, in 1989, oil tanker Exxon Valdez left the port of Valdez with 53 million gallons of bay crude oil on board. The ship struck by relief in Prince William Sound, Alaska, spilling more than 11 million gallons of crude oil. On this day, in 1998, GMC Balayogi Telugu Desam was elected as the 12th Speaker of the Lok Sabha. Balayogi's parliamentary career began in 1991 when he contested from the Amalpuram constituency on the Telugu Desam party ticket and was elected to the 10th Lok Sabha for the first time.
And up next we get you.
Yeah, absolutely. After that, we'll get you all the weather updates across the country for today. While the isolated to scattered rainfall or snowfall with thunderstorm and lightning very likely over western Himalayan region today. Isolated hailstorm also very likely in Uttarakhand today. Isolated to scattered rainfall with thunderstorm, lightning and gusty winds likely over East Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra and Telangana today. And due to eastward movement of the western disturbance, the dry weather will prevail over Punjab, Haryana, Chandigarh and Delhi, Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan from today onwards. Clear weather conditions are very likely over Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh from tomorrow. And let's also now take a look at the temperature in your city today.
Alright, that's it in this edition of Breakfast News this morning. But before we go, we leave you on this quick reminder. Again, we ask you to be very careful with regard to the fight against the pandemic. Remember, we are showing a good rate of the recoveries there, and also our vaccination drive is progressing successfully. But that does not mean that we sit back and have a lax attitude. Remember, wearing a mask is still very important, and wearing it correctly and properly in view of the upcoming festive season is also very important. Wear a mask, wear it correctly and properly.
Absolutely. We urge you to exercise utmost precautions in the Kumbh festivities and the upcoming Holi festival as well. And before we go, we are leaving you with these visuals from Japan of the cherry blossom there. While spring has come almost 2 weeks earlier than usual, there and beautiful cherry blossom there. We can see this time the flowers, known as sakura are in full bloom. Take a look at those visuals there. People seen thronging to parks to sit under those beautiful cherry trees. Take a look and have a great and a safe day ahead. Thanks for being with us.